YouTube documentary by Josh Pieters has taken the internet by storm. His subject matter is Lily Phillips, a 23-year-old British OnlyFans star who recently announced she would sleep with 100 men in a single day. The stunt was scandalous and sensationalist enough on its own merit, but now, as clips from Josh's video capturing the lead up to and fallout of the event have circulated online, the conversation is hitting a fever pitch. This scene in particular has gone mega viral.
When was the last time you ate?
I think I had a yum yum, and I think I had a sandwich, and that was kind of, and then the rest. It's not for the weak, girls, if I'm honest. It was hard.
I would think so.
I don't know if I'd recommend it.
Why not?
I think if you're a different type of girl, it's very like, it's kind of like being a prostitute in a sense of like, it's just a different feeling. I don't know how to explain it, like...
It's not like just having sex with someone.
Yeah. Just one in, one out, like it feels intense.
Like more intense than you thought it might.
Definitely.
Oof, this is obviously very disturbing to watch. And I think this segment in particular sums up the gravity of what this young woman chose to do and the toll I think it's going to inevitably take on her. But in response to it, some have started to argue that Lily is a victim in this scenario, with some even going so far as to argue that the men themselves who participated should face consequences. I have a lot of thoughts about that, and I'm betting you do too. First, I'm Hannah Cox with Base Politics. Welcome to my channel where I bring you my politically homeless takes on politics and culture. Before we dive in today, make sure you like this video, subscribe to my channel if you have not already, and of course, ring that notification bell so you never miss one of my episodes. After consuming hours worth of commentary about this documentary online on social media, I finally had enough, and out of admittedly morbid curiosity, I went to watch the full-length video. And I don't know exactly what I was expecting. I don't dip my toe in the water of the adult film industry all that much, but whatever I thought I was going to get, it wasn't this. This was genuinely a horror picture show. One of the top comments underneath the video, I think, absolutely sums it up best. Somebody wrote, "This is the best anti-porn film I've ever seen." Yeah, I don't know how you could watch this and come away supporting the adult film industry. Not that I did going into this, okay? I want to be very clear because I think oftentimes libertarian, politically homeless, independent viewpoints on subject matters like this, particularly ones that are very nuanced, they often get misconstrued. So I want to be very clear about where I stand. I hate social conservatism. I grew up in it. I think it is oppressive. It's infantilizing. It's frequently very silly. It's counterintuitive to liberty. And the consequences of it, of involving the government to force people to behave within the confines of one group's perceptions of morality, is unethical in and of itself and often carries very severe consequences, very severe secondhand effects. Consequences that often far surpass the actions that they seek to police in the first place. We've seen this with things like the war on, and I think we've often seen this when it comes to this industry. For me, I really am guided by the nap. I know this is like very libertarian wonky talk. I don't even like using the term because it's kind of cringe, but what it is representing is important. NAP, the NAP, non-aggression principle. It means essentially that libertarians don't believe that we should be criminalizing things or involving the government and getting rid of activities we don't like, whether that be through bans or through fines, unless the person in question is acting in a way that is harming other people's personhood or their property. That's the line. Whether that be choosing to consume certain substances or choosing to sleep around for profit, I remain completely unconvinced that the government has a role to play in preventing these actions, and that if you seek to use it to do so, what comes next is far worse than the consequences of those actions on their face. But that does not mean that I think these things should be championed or even socially accepted. Quite the contrary. I think social repercussions are a free market consequence that are often far more impactful in regulating negative behaviors than any law could ever be. And the problem is that in Western culture, while we have been right to push back against many of the legalistic laws, many of the socially conservative laws that were in place that have actively punished people for behaviors we think are sinful or immoral, we went too far past that when many began to take the stance that they were doing nothing wrong, that there was inherently nothing perverse with these activities at all. We've seen that from the far left. We've even seen that among some libertarians. I mean, look no further than some of these popular slogans we've seen in society over the past couple of years. You have women running around saying, shout your, be proud of your abortion, having abortion parties. We have people saying, work is work. I mean, yeah, technically, work is work, but it should not be treated as just another job one might have. You have whole riots and protest movements with women carrying signs, even having their little girls carry signs that say, my body, my choice. And yes, I agree. Your body, your choice. I have held that line consistently, no matter which subject matter comes up. I'm one of the only ones, okay? I'm one of the only honest people in America that's consistently held to this line of your body, your choice. So if you were somebody that was, marching along beside me during COVID when I was pushing back on all of that nonsense, you better not disagree with me here. Your body, your choice, but also your body, your consequences. Just as I said during the pandemic that you had every right to push back on putting something into your body you were not comfortable with, you also had to live with the consequences and risk of that. I think that is true when we are talking about pregnancy. I think that is true when we are talking about substance use. I think that's true when we're talking about medical substances that you might put into your arm. And I think that that is true when we are talking about work. The government fundamentally does not have a right to tell you how to use your body or how not to use your body. Now, as you can probably tell from my tone, I think many people on the right have been largely hypocritical on this question, but I want to be very, very clear. So have those on the left. And when it comes to this particular conversation, it seems like a lot of feminists are already in overdrive, working to push the second part of that equation, your body, your consequences, onto anyone but Lily herself in response to this film. This article ran in the UK Spectator this week. The headline says, "Shame on the men exploiting Lily Phillips." And in the opening paragraph, they write, Lily Phillips, who had the 101 men in a single day in October, has hit the headlines, but the focus should instead be on the men that exploit her and the men that queued up to have sex with her. Having appeared in a YouTube film, I Slept with 100 Men in One Day, this young vulnerable woman is now planning her next endeavor to have sex with 1,000 men in 24 hours or 1 minute 44 seconds per second encounter nonstop for a day. Doubtless, this publicity stunt will increase her already substantial annual earnings, but Phillips will pay a heavy price. And this article was by no means the only place that the case was being made that the men should bear a lot of culpability for participating in this event versus Lily herself. Kim Iverson summed this up online. She tweeted, "Everyone keeps hating on Lily Phillips, but ignore the 101 men who participated. The ratio of sick men to women is the reason few women become this sick." I don't know, Kim. Look, I get feeling a bit radicalized by this video. And I do understand that urge to do something. When you see a younger woman who is putting themselves in danger, even when it is of their own volition, there is this like big sister instinct, I think, that crops up in many of us, and I have it too, where you just want to rush in and save them from themselves. Watching this documentary was revolting. The only person in the entire film who seemed to give a rip about Lily as a person at all was the filmmaker himself.
I think I'm realizing is actually more mental than we originally thought. There are 100 men turning up to have sex with her for 5 minutes each in a single day. I mean, there's a decent chance that one of them is going to be dangerous. One of them might have a weapon, have a criminal record. A few of them will have STIs. Just on a basic statistic, you can know that a few of them are going to have STIs. So let's just hope those condoms are good ones.
I had a sinking feeling that perhaps Lily hadn't fully thought through the challenge she was undertaking.
Like this poor, sweet, genuine man. I've never seen anything by this YouTuber before, but I thought he was a wonderful filmmaker. He really did. He did this without showing a lot of judgment. He had a lot of empathy for Lily, a lot of curiosity, and he did that while still holding the line and pointing out the obvious harms and potential pitfalls that were in her pathway. And I guess, you would kind of assume other people around a 23-year-old girl would be doing this when they say that they're going to do something this extreme. But he really did seem to be the only one. Not her parents, not her team. Everybody around her seems to be enabling this except for him. On Twitter, Claire Lehman said, "Watch the Lily Phillips doc by Josh Pieters. Very well made. Also terrifying. The girl is just not very bright. Her entourage, 9 on the payroll, are coming up with the stunts, but providing zero risk management for her. They didn't even make sure the 100 guys were free of STIs," which is true. Criminal. And then Ayala, who is a herself on Twitter, said they didn't do STI testing. And Claire said no. She said they were prioritizing those with checks, but when dozens dropped out the day of, it became a complete free-for-all. And that's true. Okay. They document this in the video where she admits to first and foremost, not even seeming to know how very, very serious STIs are transmitted. The filmmaker addresses this with her. It is quite shocking to me for somebody in this line of work to be as completely uneducated as she presents herself to be. She then says that they were prioritizing people who had some kind of a scan, but that obviously people could be fraudulent about that, and that result may no longer be true. So there was really just no way of knowing for sure. And she seemed very, very flippant about this, as did the rest of her team. They even say in the documentary that they almost didn't have security their day of and were glad that they ended up doing it in the end. Like, what are these 9 people on payroll doing for you? Obviously, they're leeching off of her. But I mean, even for leeches, these people really just seem to be complete lowlifes and total idiots. But I think I probably have the most disdain in watching this for her parents, who she says that she has a good relationship with and that are fully aware of her line of work.
Well, my parents knew straight from the start, about what I was doing. Yeah, I was just very open with it. Obviously, at the start, they were a bit apprehensive because they want me to be safe and they want me to make good decisions and stuff like that. I just think I can't hold myself back and do something that I'm scared what other people might think.
Your parents must be very sort of forward-thinking and open-minded, which is great, because I think if I told my parents that I was the UK's biggest cunt, they probably they wouldn't like that.
Yikes. Now, I've seen some people saying that Lily's mom actually even works for her and manages her money. I could not verify that, but that's an even crazier level of affiliation with her daughter's line of work, if that's true. But take that aside, even just the fact that her parents are very aware of what she's doing and apparently are making absolutely no attempts to stop her, it just rattles my brain. Obviously, she and I come from very different families, very different, social climates. It's very, very hard for me to place myself in her shoes. I don't know anybody in my entire network who would shrug off their daughter, not only being in this line of work, but taking it to the extreme that she has taken it to in these kinds of circumstances, to not be very concerned with her safety, which she says at times that they're worried about her safety, or they were at first, I guess. She says that they do worry about her being able to find a husband one day. But I mean, they're not that worried, right? They're not intervening. They're not, I just can't compute. I can't fathom. My parents would be in shambles. They would be grief stricken. They would be doing absolutely everything they can to pull me out. And I think that the fact that her parents do not seem to be overtly concerned with the line of work that she's in has likely produced the low self-esteem that I feel very certain she suffers from, okay? People often mistake this. There's this perception that if you love your kids, that you dote on them and you rescue them and you fix things for them and you do everything you can to protect them and to give them an easy life, a good life. But in reality, that's very bad parenting. And we know from studies that oftentimes that kind of parenting actually does lead to low self-esteem, okay? And it's not that these parents are doing anything abusive. They mean well, but actually their actions are harmful because they prevent their kids from gaining the confidence that young people get from being self-assured, from learning how to do things, from having trust put in them. Also, you add to that fact that young people really benefit from having boundaries. They actually really benefit from having what's known as authoritative parenting, right? Not authoritarian parenting, but authoritative parenting, where they have very strong perimeters and expectations. The home is still warm and loving, but there are lines, there are categories and expectations that they are expected to meet and to achieve in. And that as a whole is very good for kids. It's good for kids to have to learn the consequences of their actions. It's good for kids to fail. It's good for kids to be pushed to keep trying. All of this kind of work throughout their young adult lifehood is what ultimately creates somebody who has resiliency, who has resolve, who has tenacity. And that is what produces high self-esteem. People often get it twisted. People often, number one, confuse cockiness with confidence. True confidence, though, is people who really like themselves, people who are proud of themselves because it is based in something. It's based in a self-assuredness of, I will always figure it out. I will always be able to do this. I am capable. That produces confidence. Okay. Cockiness is a false sense of confidence. It's portrayed in people who don't truly have those underlying belief systems about themselves. But true confidence and true self-esteem, that comes from knowledge and trust in yourself. And I think that she seems to be fundamentally lacking that. And I do heavily blame her parents for that. And I know money can often skew things for people very, very quickly. I'm not sure how much money she's making, but it is apparently quite a bit. She says in the documentary, her first month on OnlyFans, she made over $13,000 in 1 month. And she then allows the documentary maker to see her past month revenue, what she's making. They don't disclose that on screen, but he's pretty shell-shocked and says it's more than you'd even think. I'm guessing she's probably bringing in several $100,000 per month at least. And if her parents are, partaking in that, if they are benefiting from that, I guess they would not be the first to have their judgment skewed when it comes to their kid obtaining money and fame and doing so through practices that often are abusive, even abusive to them. And it causes an effect where the parents simply look away. It's very sad to see. Something I thought was so interesting throughout this film is that Lily consistently tries to make the claim that she likes doing this, that she just enjoys this, that she is just very sexual by nature. And this is something I've noticed that a lot of women in the adult industry do. And I just don't buy it. Number one, fundamentally, I don't believe you. But I think that while she's pushing this narrative and it's kind of like her top line talking point she's making throughout the documentary, there's a few other very short, almost insignificant clips that I think show or give a lens into how she really feels about herself and this line of work. First, there's a scene in the very beginning of the film that just immediately kind of crushed my spirit for her a little bit.
You know, I don't drink tea.
Yeah. Oh, really?
No, so this is probably going to taste like shit because I don't really know how to make it, but just good for one thing, me, honestly.
I'm only good for one thing. Ugh. I know she's being self-deprecating here. I know she's making a joke. I don't find it funny, and I often think when people are making self-deprecating jokes, they do so because they actually do believe these things about them, and they're kind of just trying to get out ahead of other people who will make those same kinds of jokes at their expense. She also says at another point in the film when she's talking to the documentary maker, he asks her, do you think you'll ever get married? Like, do you think this will prevent you from getting married? Do you think you'll have to marry somebody in the industry? And she says this.
And do you think your partner one day will be someone from the industry most likely, or?
Yeah, I talk about this a lot with my parents because that's the one thing I guess they worry about is like, will you ever find a boyfriend?
Yeah.
But there's so many guys out in the world. I think, one poor bastard's got to marry me. I rather think it's going to be someone from the industry or someone who is into lending me out.
Lending you out?
Yeah. Like into hot wife or being a...
I just thought this was so sad. Not only does it continue to back up my opinion that she has very low self-esteem, I think it just shows you that she feels her options for her future are very limited. She doesn't feel deserving of much more. Somebody's going to have to take me, and probably it's going to be somebody who wants to pay out. But the line that really landed my analysis for me, the one that really kind of gave me a conclusion about what's actually going on internally for her, was this scene.
Before I had sex, I was never much for... I actually wanted to wait till marriage at one point. I just used to think it was a real special thing. As soon as I actually did it and had, I kind of realised that it wasn't special, and also that I just really loved it and really enjoyed it, and that I wanted to do it way more often.
So while she claims to just be very sexual and to just love this lifestyle and have always been this way, you can tell she's lying by this segment. Not only can you tell in her body language, I think, throughout the film that she's lying, but this is the little truthful background information she does provide. And in saying it, she's proving that no, she was not always this way and that she didn't always have this belief system about sex. She wanted to maintain her virginity until marriage. She used to think that this was something that was very special. She had it on a pedestal. So given that narrative, coupled with the career that she's built, the behaviors that she is exhibiting, I think we see a pattern of behavior that I've observed in other women, albeit it's being carried out to an extreme when it comes to Lily. I don't know when it happened to her or what the contexts were around it, but you can tell by the story that she had a bad experience that fundamentally reshaped her attitude towards sex. And this is something that we see, okay? This is a pattern that can be observed when a person experiences a sexual encounter that conflicts with their values or their expectations or their feelings. We often see cognitive dissonance arise, and you will see that person then work to reframe that experience or engage in behaviors that work to justify or normalize it. So many women, for example, will enter relationships with someone who has abused them, as an example, someone who maybe took advantage of them when they were intoxicated. It's a way of like justifying what happened, normalizing what happened. It wasn't that bad. We ended up dating afterwards. There's also the more well-known trauma response where people might engage in hypersexual behaviors as a coping mechanism, trying to regain control over their sexuality or to desensitize themselves to the negative emotions that are associated with the initial traumatic event. And we know that many also develop maladaptive coping mechanisms, such as using as a way to seek validation or to numb their emotional pain. Either way, they're trying to rewrite the narrative of what happened to them, even if unconsciously, and that is what I think we see her doing here. We also see a lot of victims participate in what's called self-objectification, where they are experiencing unwanted sexual encounters, and that can lead to them then viewing themselves through an objectified lens, potentially devaluing their personal boundaries or prioritizing external validation over their personal well-being. Like for me, watching this documentary, watching Lily was like watching a character come up out of the DSM and walk around. As someone in the YouTube comment said, how people don't see this as a kind of self-harm is beyond me. And that's exactly how I felt. I felt like it was like watching an addict actively working to OD. So yes, all of this to say, Lily is clearly not a well person, but does that mean that she lacks agency? And does that mean that the men or the industry itself are responsible for her choices more than she is? On Twitter, someone said, Lily Phillips is a grown woman who was aware of the consequences of it all and consented for it. She's most certainly not a victim, but I can't help but feel bad physically and mentally. She surely can't be okay. The disassociation, the crying, fully consented, but unsettling nevertheless. Totally agree. Very disconcerting, very upsetting. And I think this is proof in the pudding that consent culture is sort of trash, okay? Like, yes, consent is obviously very, very important when it comes to sexual relationships, and it's utterly ridiculous. We still have to assert that and affirm that for far too many men. But consent is not the end-all be-all of the conversation. That's not all there is to it, okay? Consent can still be sort of a murky area. And I think we know this when we look at, the Me Too movement, many of the conversations that came from it. Like, if somebody consents and they're intoxicated, is that truly consent? If somebody consents, but they're doing so because they feel pressured by their boss or because they feel like they have to sleep with somebody in order to keep their position, is that consent? These are important conversations. And that's why I think I am interested in the one happening around Lily Phillips, because obviously she consented. She sent out a casting call, okay? She was actively working to make this happen. She rented a house. She very much put herself in that situation. And I think that she has agency to do so. And I think that as a full-grown adult, we should not be infantilizing her or her choices. I've seen some people going so far as to try to compare the men who participated in this event with Lily Phillips to those who have now been convicted for Giselle Pericot in France. If you're not familiar with that case, this is the woman whose husband was drugging her and soliciting for men to come and abuse her for years and years and years. I think to make those comparisons is grotesque. I think that it is an offense to everything Giselle has gone through and the work that she has bravely done to expose those men. These two people are in no way the same category. Lily, 110%, knew what she was doing. She intended to profit off of it. She knew that it would make her a lot more famous, and it has. She's probably now the most well-known person on OnlyFans at this point. I'm sure she's making so much money. It's ungodly. I really think that it is ridiculous to suggest that she is somehow a victim here, at least a victim of the men. I do think she might be a victim of herself. And I think that we can both condemn the men participating without trying to take the culpability off of Lily and put it on them, okay? Like, these guys were very clearly degenerates. They were probably very, very broken people themselves. We know that hurt people often hurt people. They, like Lily, I think, probably have things that happen to them in their past and are repeating patterns, repeating cycles. Like, normal, well-adjusted people would not go sign up for this. And everybody involved, I want to point out, knew it was shameful, okay? Like, the entire documentary, everybody's face that participated is blurred except for Lily and the filmmaker. This person said on YouTube, none of the men are willing to reveal their faces. Some are bothered by the number of men before them. Only Lily's face is shown. They even blur the agent lady's face out, her staff. It's clearly degrading to everyone involved. Absolutely. They all know what they're doing is shameful. No one is proud to be there. No one thinks what they're doing is okay. They all fear anybody else discovering that they are there participating in what they're doing. So yeah, I have a lot of disdain for them. I have a lot of scorn for them. But there's a line between saying that somebody did something shameful and that they're a degenerate and that what they were participating in was grotesque versus saying that they are a racist. Another person on YouTube said, a reminder that Lily Phillips and the 100 men who had sex were all consented to the stunt, and there is a lot of regret nevertheless. The wider culture has tried to reduce sexual morality to nothing more than consent, but some things are just bad for you even with consent. And that much in the film is obvious, not just by Lily's behavior and crying after the event is over, but how the men are discussing the event with the filmmaker, and honestly, with how the filmmaker himself discusses it after the fact. He goes into the house and he keeps pointing out throughout the event, he's kind of mostly hanging around outside while this is actually going on, but he keeps saying, like, the energy in here is really weird. Like, it's a really weird feeling to be in here. It's like just a very, very odd environment. And I saw this person on Twitter, her name's Keisha. She said, let me tell you something about this documentary that I found incredibly interesting. In the beginning, so many of the men that showed up were so scared. And actually, one of the men was shaking violently after he came out on the couch and sat down. He was shaking so hard that he could barely drink his juice on the couch. He also could barely speak. I do believe some energy was transferred back and forth, and I think it was way more ominous than we can perceive. Also, the filmmaker spoke about how weird the energy in the house was and that he was uncomfortable. Again, Lily and these guys have taken it to an extreme, but this is hookup culture. This is what the end result of it is. We have cheapened for so long that people have forgotten they will still pay the price for participating in it in unholy and abusive ways. You know, it is supposed to be a spiritual practice. It is supposed to be two people becoming one. It is a very, very intimate thing to do. People can try to set that aside and pretend those elements don't exist, but they can't outrun them. I don't think anybody felt good about themselves or what they did coming out of that house that day. But again, and I just want to make sure this is crystal clear, because as a feminist, I don't want to get lumped in with these other women who are trying to act like the men were manipulating her or taking advantage of her or were, you know, in some way, shape, or form responsible for her choices. I, if anything, would liken them to drug dealers. I would say she's more like an addict. They are more like the drug dealer, the supplier.
But it's up to you, right? Like, when you know.
Yeah.
Have you even processed, do you think, what's happened?
Not yet. God, I won't forget this day, Jesus.
When I decided to start making this documentary, I wasn't too sure of what to expect. I certainly didn't expect to see Lily so upset at the end of it all. I thought perhaps in years to come she may look back at this day in sadness, but not so instantly afterwards. She had stressed to me throughout my time with her how excited she was for this challenge and how this was her fantasy, so to see her so visibly upset at the end of it all was really sad. But my confusion was only added to in the days following our filming with Lily, as she announced to her fans that in February of 2025, she would be sleeping with 1,000 men in a single day to break the world record.
Last week I did 101 guys. Now this was just the warm-up, because in February I'm going to be the first person ever to reach 4 digits of guys all in one day.
It's definitely sad to watch. And unfortunately, I don't think she's going to stop. As I've already mentioned here, she has advertised an even larger event in the future. And it's very, very sad because it feels like when we used to watch Amy Winehouse perform and she was refusing to go to rehab and like was very, very clearly succumbing both to her ED and to her alcoholism. That's what this feels like. This person is actively self-harming. She's being very, very reckless. And I really hope that something or someone intervenes for her before it's too late. I don't know if that's possible. I don't know if Lily can be saved given the dynamic around her, how much money she's making at this point. There is another adult film industry participant who appears in this documentary who talks about how it's like making a deal with the devil and you just keep having to up the ante. You know, you think you're just getting involved to do like take a picture or do a couple small things like this. And before you know it, you're having, you know, these kinds of events on camera. And I think that that's just very, very, very bleak. And I want to say clearly, as a Christian, I do believe that redemption is possible for her. Okay. I've seen a lot of people saying like, she can never recover. Her soul can never recover. She can never undo what she's did. Redemption is always possible. Grace is always available. I'm just saying, given the dynamics around her, the yes men she seems to have surrounding her, the amount of money that's being made off of her, I've seen how hard it is for people to extricate themselves from those kinds of scenarios. But what I do know is that watching this can save others. I think education and awareness are absolutely the best solutions for both men and women who are caught in the throes of this disgusting industry or who are maybe just like dipping their toe in the water as we speak. As Kimberly Ross said, I've not seen a single person say Lily Phillips stunt or whatever you want to call it was sexy or awesome, thankfully. No, you couldn't. There's nothing enticing about this. It just turns your stomach to watch it. I really do think young people should be shown this documentary. Obviously, a lot of the scenes in the documentary are blurred, but I thought this really just summed up the entire experience so well. This is a picture of the room where it all went down after everything was said and done. And you can see that there are like wrappers all over the room and then a single white rose that's left on the bed. And she says that one of the men brought that to her. And I just thought ending the documentary showing that single white rose on the bed was so tragic. I only know about the symbolism because I am high-key a Selena fanatic, the original Selena, not Selena Gomez, Selena Quintanilla Perez, okay? Love her, watched that movie pretty much every day of middle school and high school. And if you've seen it, the Jennifer Lopez version, at the end of the film, she has this dream right before she dies and someone throws a single white rose on the stage. So of course I had to like do a deep dive analysis into what that meant as a child. And what it means is that a white rose often represents purity and it can also represent an untimely death. The adult industry is a demonic one, and it's one that cannot be countered with government solutions. I often see social conservatives saying, oh, we should ban it, oh, we should shut it down. You're not going to. You're not going to. Bans don't work. Product bans don't work. You'll just create black markets. You'll just create less safe working conditions for women like Lily. What does work is education, is sunlight, is exposure, and that is what we are seeing with this documentary. And I'm just so glad it's out there because I think online there has been such a glorification of people who are participating in things like OnlyFans. It's obviously been quite normalized. I mean, the amount of money that's being spent, the number of men who are paying for these services is jaw-dropping. And I think it's important to remember that things that are demonic often seem sexy or easy. They very frequently promise money or gratification without the work that is needed to obtain such desires ethically and in a way that won't harm your soul. Because in the end, the forbidden apple, it will ruin your relationships. It can ruin your life. It can ruin your mentality. We know the harmful effects of the sector. They're well documented. And yet it just seems more and more people are rushing in head first than ever before, whether it be on the provider or the consumer side. Lily is sadly not the first, and she probably will not be the last to fall for the trappings of fame or money, both of which are ultimately very, very empty. Ask anybody who's obtained them. Really, ask anybody. These are complete illusions. They will not make you happy, but a lot of people have lost their lives sacrificing to obtain them. And I fear that's what Lily is in the process of doing. I hope that at the very least, this will be a cautionary tale that can save others. All right, guys, I hope you liked this episode. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to my channel if you've not already, and if you want even more content, you can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, or TikTok.